Hello, and welcome to Positive Fandom's Sunday brunch show. Good morning, everybody. Good evening or good night, wherever you are in the world. I am RM. I hope you are very well out there. And Russ Whitfield is with us as usual. Good morning to you, Russ. How are you today?
I'm great, thanks, RM. As we were just saying backstage, I've literally just put my ass on this chair. I was staying at a friend's house last night. A guy called Ben Kane. He's author of historical fiction, which I used to be. But Ben's sort of gone on and he's released loads and loads of books. And we watched the boxing last night, which was a big British fight between a boxer called Kell Brook and another one called Amir Khan. It was a lot of hype around the fight. The fight delivered. We had a great night. I had a couple of glasses of wine. I'm not going to lie, but nothing too hectic. But yeah, I mean, I have to give Ben a shout out. Actually, if you like action-packed historical fiction set in ancient Rome, he's done a lot in ancient Rome about Spartacus and things like that. Also, done some medieval stuff around the Crusades. He's currently writing a Napoleonic book. He's an excellent author, and if you like that sort of thing, go and check out Ben Kane. He's outstanding, and he's a very, very, very nice man.
Well, his work sounds amazing. And of course, you yourself have some amazing books on historical fiction as well, Russ, correct?
Well, I have some books on historical fiction. I wouldn't say that they were that amazing, but yes, thank you. Yeah, I had three novels published a number of years ago and a couple of novellas. But interestingly, it was quite inspiring going to see Ben, and that like Magnum had that little voice in the back of his mind. I'm thinking, maybe I can write another book.
Ah.
So I have some ideas for that, and I think I might like to enter the fantasy arena, but with a bit of a twist. But at the moment, I've got some film work I need to get finished, although that's over the past sort of 48 hours, that's become a little bit of a rocky road. So, and that was like, I was like, oh man. And then I thought maybe I should just do another book, but we will see.
No, that sounds amazing. I think it's wonderful to, focus on something creatively and, you have the desire, all of a sudden that spark lights within you. And this is what we definitely want to see here at the PGS is to see other PGS members, get that creativity bug. And, you had these three wonderful books. And
Thank you.
guys, you got to check them out. Gladiatrix, I know, is the first book.
hmm
What are the names of your other two books, Russ?
And the first one was Gladiatrix, and that's a bit pants, to be honest with you. I'm kind of like I read it recently, and I was like, oh, no, what did I do that? But the second two I thought were okay. The second one's called Roma Victrix, and the third one's called Imperatrix, and it's about a lady gladiator in ancient Rome.
Right. And of course, the X is the pluralized form of, I'm sorry, the female form of gladiator. So it
Yeah,
has nothing to do with X, like that.
Dominatrix, which everybody thought it was. Like if you, when I remember reading the first couple of Amazon reviews, I thought this was a sex book because it had dominatrix in the title, but it isn't. It's about um, but yeah,
Yeah.
yes, it was good times.
So, just to clarify, so people are like, well, is it one of those X things? It's not triple X or anything like that. And it has nothing to do with people using X like Latin X. It's nothing to do with that. It's actually the Roman language,
Yeah,
if you speak
Latin. Yeah.
Latin, excuse me, Latin, and that's how you feminize gladiator. It's
hmm
gladiatrix.
One of the
So,
ways, but I
guys,
thought it sounded cool, so I went with that as well. So there could be some debate about that. If was his name Plato? Is Darth Plato's on here? He'll probably have that. That there is another feminine form of it, but I figured gladiatrix just sounded better.
well, I
So I
think it
went.
sounds fantastic. And guys, definitely please go ahead and check out Russell Whitfield's books. If you're looking for some extraordinary fictitious historical kind of story set in that era. And from what he's been saying, it sounds like we may be treated to even more of his work. So that's very promising. And this is what we want at the PGS. We want the PGS members to come on and talk about their work too.
Mm.
So, when that process starts, Russ, you definitely have to come on again and tell us, where you are and how things are going. So that is exciting. And I do just want to say good morning to everybody out there. Good morning, Tom Jr. Jackson, who is our mod and collaborator on the
The
channel.
man, the legend that is Tom Junior Jackson.
Yes, he is an amazing person and a very good friend of mine, and I depend on him for a lot of things, and he's always helping me out and the channel and pretty much everybody in the PGS out. So
Mm.
kudos to you, Tom. Good morning to you. We have Renz Talentino saying good evening. Well, good evening to you, Renz Talentino, and thank you. And I think he says time zones. Yeah, we know it's cool. We get it, and we're
Yeah.
just glad to see you. I don't know if you know this, Rez, but I am in New York, and Russell is in the United Kingdom. So we do have different time zones here, and we welcome those time zones. I know I called it a brunch, but just glad that you are here today, here with Positive Fandom on our Sunday Brunch show. And of course, we have the wonderful Mikey Lito is with us this morning.
Hey,
Good
Mikey.
morning, Mikey Lito. It's great to see you today. Mario Lopez is here. Good morning, Mario. Good
Hey,
to see
Maria.
you as well. And Viking Doug. Good morning to you.
Hey, Viking Duck.
Oh, look, Loco Lou is here. Loco Lou, what's poppin', people? Hi, Loco Lou. I hope you are well today. And we also have a name I haven't seen before, the Outcast Creative. He says, or good afternoon in our case, can't hang around as about to make a friend on a certain game show. Well, listen, you have a great day, the Outcast Creative. Thank
Are
you
you
for
the guys that just did a podcast with Critical Drinker and Mauler, Jason Fleming? Is that those guys? If so, I watched that podcast. It was absolutely brilliant, and I haven't. There was a follow up. It came up in my feed, but I've not watched it yet. So if that's you, top work. It was brilliant to watch that.
Yeah, and everybody, please go ahead and check out the Outcast Creative if it is them. Go ahead and check out their work as well as for recommendation for Russ. And I'm certainly going to click on that when I get off of this stream for sure. Um, you know, uh, to see them, and oh look, they did respond. Hi, Mario Lopez, for saying hello to us, and special guests and everyone else. Um, the Outcast Creative says, yes, buddy, that is us. I'm directing Jace 5 times. Well, that is wonderful. Thank you so much for tuning in, the Outcast Creative, and lots more to come. And we're looking
Brilliant.
forward to seeing more of your work for sure. Thank you so much for stopping by and wishing us a good morning, good evening, or a good night. And certainly cheering up and brightening up our morning for sure. So thank you, guys and ladies out there. Russ, there's so much to talk about this week. There's so much to parlay. Is
I
there not?
know, right?
And I have to say, of course, meeting with you in the morning always puts a smile on my face and everybody here in the
Likewise.
chat. And, what's interesting about all of this is, the first thing that we're going to be talking about is a show called The Peacemaker, and you cannot ignore the success that The Peacemaker has been. And just honestly, Russ, I haven't seen anything like this in a while, and it's so refreshing to get
Hmm.
such a great show. I just am so pleased as punch. And hello, Martino Silmoni. Hello, Martino. Good to see you this morning, and of course, where you are this afternoon, maybe even evening. Such a pleasure to see you in Italy. And I have to say, it's just wonderful. What a wonderful show, Russ. Do you want to start off on talking about
Oh
the
man,
Peacemaker?
there aren't enough superlatives for me. I didn't know when I first went into this show what it was going to be like because James Gunn, and we know James Gunn from Guardians of the Galaxy. I know he wrote the screenplay for Zack Snyder's first big movie, Dawn of the Dead. It was a James Gunn screenplay, but with the jokey aspect of then the Suicide Squad, and I was thinking, what are we actually going to get with Peacemaker? What is this show going to land like with me? It's a comedy show. It's hilarious. It's adult. It addresses. It thumbs its nose at certain aspects of our culture, which I just found absolutely hilarious. It's entirely irrelevant, but there's also a lot going on under the surface. And I think anybody that tries to uh, be a writer or be a creative, especially a writer. In my case, you look at people like James Gunn and the stuff that they can do in a sort of dumb comedy show, and it on its surface you can look at it as a dumb comedy show on its surface, but it's not. There's so much depth to that character, what he's going through, and how Gunn addresses modern social norms and thumbs his nose at them. You know, you just look on an envy and you think, fuck, if only I was that good. I would love to be half as good as that, a quarter as good as that, a third. You know, he's fantastic. The show caused a lot of controversy with its endings, and I'm afraid I think we're going to have to go into spoiler territory. What as this one scene, because actually I have to say that one scene was spoiled for me, and I was very upset because I watched it with Samantha, my daughter, and the joy she got from this one scene, and I was kind of like, oh, I wish I'd have had that joy because it was amazing. But yeah, on the whole, I can't I can't fault it. I cannot fault that show. It was pitch perfect. There's belly laughs. There's pathos. They even played Steel Panther, which is one of my favorite heavy metal bands. So, you know, which they just
Mhm.
sort of snuck it in there. And I was watching because Sam likes it, and she said, "Oh, is that Steel Panther?" And of course, yeah, it absolutely was Steel Panther. So yeah, I think it's really funny that Peacemaker himself is like hugely into 80s glam rock. I think that's absolutely hilarious. But yeah, uh, what to say? The whole show, beginning, middle to the end, pitch perfect. I'm so glad they've got another season. But I think we have to talk about that scene. But before that, what did you think?
Well, I have to say that this show, it's there's absolutely no doubt, and I do also want to say hello to Megas Avacanti. Hello, I hope you are well this morning. Thank you for tuning in, of course, and it's wonderful to have you here as well. Um, what I was going to say is that something that I noticed about this show is that, we're always looking for something to entertain us.
Hmm.
We want a good story, we want a certain level of balance, and it is very true that this show hit the mark. But there is something very special about the show, and I'm going to just say it from the top of our discussion, is that I found myself absolutely on the same wavelength of the show. In other words, they certainly are saying a lot of things that I am thinking.
Mm,
I'm not going to deny it. I'm not going to deny that, like, for example, in part of the show, when, the main character reads things off the internet and believes it. And I certainly am not going to deny that I see things on the internet that I know may not be true, but
mm,
I still may discuss these things with friends and family. I'm not going to
hmm.
deny it. I'm not going to pretend like I'm like, well, they said that, but we know it's not true. But I'm still discussing it. It's in my mind. I'm going to shoot it out at my friend, and my friend might say, "Well, no, you're full of it." Or another person might say, "Well, I don't think so." And another person might say, "Well, you have to think about this critically," or whatever. And I think that approach of the realism of how we interact with one another, it was the striking mark that related to a lot of people. This is how we communicate.
Mm,
It's not sort of like a formal, well, conversation all the time. There is a lot of exchanges of, bumfoolery and, and farce and, all sorts of fun stuff that we say to one another, especially with the vigilante character, who I feel is the boy that so many of the young boys that I grew up with. That's the vigilante character for me. You were lucky if you got the John Cena character. You were lucky if you had if you knew a
mm,
guy like that. But I think more of the men that I grew up with were very much like this vigilante character. And I just found that to be so insightful because focusing on their personalities and not trying to make them into something that they're not. He is the way he is, and he's always going to be that way. And it's, that personality, I think, strikes a mark for me because I just felt like, this was the boy next door. Yes, he is a superhero, but his personality felt like the boy next door to me. And I was like, I know so many guys like this. The guy next door I grew up with is like this young man, and I can understand his point of view, like how he sort of stuck to what he thought was important. And yes, he is a superhero who assassinates people, but aside from that part, his personality was infectious for me. And I was not expecting to kind of fall in love with the personality or the characters of John Cena and the vigilante character. So that was something that I found incredibly satisfying, in addition to the fantastic writing in the show and the fun story. And it was a fun story. You
Mm,
know, who doesn't like to see sex, in a story? Nudity. Thank you, God. Thank you for nudity and, sexual situations. I'm so pleased that they showed that. It's like we're all human beings. And Russ, I was talking to you about this, that they decided to show a woman with her husband, and they are swingers. You could tell by the way that she kind of greeted the John Cena character,
mm,
Peacemaker.
mm.
And I really loved what they did with her character, because she looks like a regular woman. This is, she's a beautiful woman, but she looks very realistic, and her
Yeah, she's not one of
personality.
those. It's 24/7 in the gym and has to look, rock hard washboard superhero tummy or anything like that. She's just a regular lady that got it on with the peacemaker and the vigilante. It's kind of like it's everybody's sexual sort of fantasy that's into that sort of thing. I'm sure we all have our favorites that we'd like to, if only they were real and I could wake up with with her or those two. That'd be great. And she lived that fantasy. And I think that there's a lot of that going on in the show. You talk about vigilante. He is kind of, that if you're a regular young guy, that could kind of be you. It's kind of like, yeah, well, he's not huge like John Cena, but he's really well trained. And there's a part of you that thinks, yeah, God, I could be vigilante. All right, he's a psycho that kills people, but that aside, there's something attainable about vigilante, and the way that he is completely fixated on Peacemaker. If you were friends with Batman, I guess you'd kind of be a bit like vigilante, wouldn't you? You'd be like, oh my God, it's so cool. Batman's my friend.
Yeah, and kind of getting back to that threesome that they had. And
Hmm.
like for me personally, it's you know honestly, I think that the Peacemaker and Vigilante would be the two guys you would want to trust to sleep with, because they're not going to do anything bad to you, and their personalities, they're
Well,
so
they
down
probably
to
do all
earth.
sorts of good things to you, to be fair.
Well, yes, of course. But, sometimes that comfortable level, like if you're going to trust someone like that, this was the best night of her life. And you could just see her from her smiling, like these guys were great, and they are great. That's the part that, perhaps isn't as focused on, in a
Hmm.
sense, that from a perspective of, being with somebody in an intimate way, you could totally trust these guys. And that is very comforting. That's very comforting, because that they're never going to be like, well, she's call her a bad name or whatever. That's never going to come up. They were grateful to her, and have a great day. Maybe it'll happen again, who knows. But
Hmm.
I think that kind of approach to something, as a casual as a threesome, really kind of sets the right tone for people who want to go there, or people who
Yeah.
are going there, or just having fun with it. Who knows what they actually did. They slept together, but I think that kind of sets a very positive tone on a sexual situation that started off where her husband was very resistant to it.
Hmm.
and and I think that it kind of went to show you that things like this do happen in normal adult relationships.
Hmm.
People are doing things like this, and let's just not pretend like it doesn't happen. The part where he picks up that beautiful woman in the bar,
Yeah.
even, for example, of course women are going to be wanting to sleep with John Cena character. And so I think that's why he's so baffled when the woman who's in the group, is a little resistant to him. But I think a lot of women would say, I kind of like him. And if you're a man, and you wanted to sleep with him, of course you're going to find him attractive. So he knows he's an attractive man. And
Hmm.
so, but he doesn't say, like, I'm God's gift to the world. So I really kind of like that. And gosh, this character's so great. I feel like I'm going on and on, but honestly, I was just so impressed. And good morning, Keely Chow.
Hey,
How
Keely.
are you? Hi. Thank you for stopping by, of course. And we have another message from the Outcast Creative, Russ.
Hmm.
And it says, Russ, I have one of your books. You'll never guess where I bought it. Kampala, Uganda.
No way. That's. I had no idea there was a Ugandan edition of that. Oh well, I hope you didn't hate it too much, Outcast Creative. That's insane. That is insane. Who knew? Uganda. There you go. It takes
Mhm.
all sorts. Well, thanks for picking it up, man. I genuinely appreciate it. Thank you. and hope it wasn't shit or too shit.
Well,
Yeah,
uh,
so Peacemaker. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about the observations that James Gunn was bringing to, well, not to the surface in Peacemaker, but I think the social commentary in there, um, it's something that lots of YouTubers talk about all the time. It's identity politics, it's identity politics, it's this, it's this, it's this. And I love the way how James Gunn, in a really subversive way, addressed that, because when you boil this stuff down, all right, when you get to the very bottom of people who are attacking what they perceive as evil in our society, it comes down to one thing and one thing only: it's white supremacy. Right? That's you boil critical race theory down or identity politics down, it's evil white men. And in this show, they decide to make the main baddie, a white supremacist called the White Dragon. I mean, it's so on the nose what they were doing, but hilarious at the same time. You've got this character, Peacemaker, who, despite the fact his dad is this evil, it's still his dad. He still wants to please his dad, and he loves his dad up until the end, where and the whole sort of story of that is him trying to sort of break free of these trappings. But what is he? What are they? They call the dad something. I know he's kind of like a bargain basement bat cave or something like that, where he's
yes,
making all this
yes.
stuff to help Peacemaker in his fight for justice. And I love the way how the messages in that show can be read in one of two ways. So I think in the climactic scene, so okay, so spoilers. So if you haven't seen Peacemaker, I'm going to talk about what he does now in the climax of the show, and I'll give you a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So in the climax of the show, it's all about the butterfly aliens that are taking over people, and they want to take over the world. And in this one scene, we find out, or prior to that, we find out Peacemaker's got a whole bunch of different helmets, and they all do a different thing. And one's called the human, the human torpedo, which launches you at a given target with a force field, and they have to destroy the creature called the cow, which is giving these aliens their food. So Peacemaker finally gets down to where he is. His friend's with him. Adebayo's with him, and she's got the helmet on and all the rest of it. She gets knocked out, having triggered it too early. And the alien who possesses the Asian policewoman says, "Stop fighting. I need to tell you what we're going to do. This is why we're trying to do it. Our planet went the same way as yours." And she then goes on in an ad hominem way to attack Donald Trump. She attacks climate change. She attacks pretty much everything that if you, for want of a better word, woke culture would attack. And it's also terrible. Oh, the masks, and you think your freedom is suffering because of a tiny inconvenience and the betterment of everybody else. And then, and it all kind of makes sense. And that we don't want your planet to go this way, and we're going to make sure that you don't have dictators doing this and climate change that and da 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 da. And Peacemaker just looks at her and goes, "Activate human torpedo," and completely torpedoes her argument and the cow, and at the same time. So it's almost like you've got this social justice message in there, and he just says activate human torpedo and torpedoes the whole argument. But then the counterbalance to that is he later on says, "Well, I only did it, to help my friends." So you can read into it what you want, and I thought that was so clever, because James Gunn had the balls to address it and to say, you know what, there are different perspectives, and some of this stuff, is nonsense, and some people do believe it's nonsense. So I really, really thought that was clever. And then, of course, after that, there's all death and destruction, and Peacemaker's injured. His friends are badly injured. In fact, we don't know if they're going to survive. And earlier on in the show, as we know, Adebayo's mum is Amanda Waller, who's head of Task Force X and all that sort of thing. And she says, as a throwaway line, "Why don't you just call the Justice League?" Now, the whole Justice League thing has been an ongoing joke throughout the whole of the Peacemaker show, in that Peacemaker often talks about the Justice League, and you can see the sidelong glances that people are giving. It's like he doesn't know the Justice League. There's one quote that I may be paraphrasing. I remember they ask, "So have you met the Flash?" He's like, "Yeah, of course I've met the Flash. What's he like?" "Well, How do you think he's like? He's a fucking dick. And you know, and that's that. And he's, yeah, I've met my woman. She was making eyes at me across the room at the party. And you know, Aquaman, oh yeah, he fucks fish. And I heard that he fucks all these, and these are thrown in there. But the other characters are looking at him like, you just repeating stuff that you read online, or you don't really know them, and you're a Z-list superhero, all that kind of thing. It's never stated. You can just tell by the performances, right? And then, of course, at the end of the show, the Justice League appears. So Peacemaker's coming out carrying his fallen comrade, and they all turn up, and you see Superman. Oh my God, the goosebumps! Superman was back. The Flash was there. Wonder Woman was there. And Aquaman was there. And of course, the first thing Peacemaker says is, "You're fucking late, you dicks." And yeah, and it's just kind of like complete irreverence. And he says to Aquaman, "Oh, why don't you just go fuck a fish?" And then the camera pans around. Shit, it's Jason Momoa. It's actually him. And he goes, "I'm really sick of that rumor." And then it pans around to the Flash, and it's Ezra Miller, and he goes, "Oh, it's not a rumor. Fuck you, Barry." And it's, you can imagine those characters interacting like that when they're not off fighting Darkseid. Now, of course, they didn't show Henry Cavill, apparently because his likeness is owned by Netflix, and unless it's him in person, they can't use his likeness for this. Don't know how true that is. And of course, they didn't show Gal Gadot, but it was the Justice League, and I I can't believe how divisive that particular scene was, because apparently this show takes place after Flashpoint. So if that's the case, then all of our fears about, the Justice League being replaced with Batgirl and Sasha Calle, Supergirl, and all that are apparently groundless. Because there they are after Flashpoint, and that's definitely Henry Cavill, and that's definitely Gal Gadot, and it's obviously Jason Momoa, and it's obviously Ezra Miller. So hope springs eternal. But I did want to address something about that. But what did you think of the turning up of the Justice League?
Well, I think that this is the way you do an end credit scene.
Hmm.
It's not obviously it's not after the credits, but
Mm.
let's say this is the way you tie in other elements of your IP into one another. It was somewhat unpredictable. I was
Mm.
not expecting to see anyone at that moment. And, of course, the funniness of them showing up when everything's over, you
Yeah.
know, um, and there was a certain sense of, and I don't even know if this is correct to say, but there was a certain sense of arrogance associated with the Justice League as they showed up, and I think that they were trying to convey that.
Mm.
It was kind of like it was almost, and this is not. I don't know whether this is the truth of what they were trying to convey, but it was almost as if they were saying, the Peacemaker and his crew are more like us, and then there's the Justice League. They're not, as the same as we are, and
No,
I
they're
think that
gods. I think you nailed it. I think that's exactly what they were saying.
and like for example, there are people who said you can't see the face of God, you can't see the face of God, and then
Mm.
even though the faces were obscured for another reason, then you couldn't see certain faces of these superheroes, and it did have like this otherworldly feel to them. And so they effectively brought them in, and as you said, that joke with where people it's smack talk, because I don't know Jason Momoa, but I know football players, I know basketball players, and we know they have smack talk, like,
Mm.
and they lay it down hard.
Mm.
In fact, for years, my father would watch sports, and I could hear the smack talk, and my father would be laughing, and I'm like, what is he laughing at? And it's like he's laughing at the smack talk.
Yeah.
He just said that this guy's mama is or whatever, and and it was funny, and the guy's like all upset about it, but it's done to it is a way that you talk to one another, but it is done to kind of like size a person up, and it's part of the battle. It's part of playing the game of this interactions with people on a day-to-day basis. So it's good that we saw that, because we can't have a situation where we're watching a show and everybody is 100% polite all the time. It just isn't like that. We have to be able to laugh at ourselves. This show laughs at itself. This
Absolutely.
show,
100%.
they want you to kind of say, oh shit, like it's got to be, there has to be some release in intention when you watch a show. And it's like, if you don't get that, if you don't get that kind of adrenaline rush and then the release to it, there's an unsatisfying feeling in a show. You're kind of like, well, what did I just watch? What was I supposed to think? They wanted you to enjoy this as if you were sitting down with your friends, or like how we're doing right now on Sunday brunch,
Mm.
just chatting away, having a laugh at it, like enjoying these scenes, and just kind of remembering, how cool of a setup this is. This felt very real to me. Of
Mm.
course, it's a story about these butterflies that go into people's bodies, but it felt very real, and it didn't feel forced or rushed or any of that stuff, including what we saw at the end,
And
and appearance.
I think so. I mean, I agree, of course, but I think with those two characters, with Aquaman and Flash, as they were set up in Zack Snyder's Justice League, and I would say even in there we never mentioned its name, Justice League, those are the two characters you can imagine that would talk to each other like that. I mean, I can imagine the Barry Allen character was the light relief in both Zack Snyder's Justice League and Justice League. Obviously, the character was treated with far more respect and not as a complete joke as he was in Justice League. But those two characters, yes, I would. I can't imagine Wonder Woman, Diana as portrayed by Gal Gadot telling Arthur to go fuck a fish, or whatever it would be, and it's not a rumor that wouldn't work with them. So Gunn nailed it. I just wanted to say, I missed it in the chat, but someone was talking about nuance, and I just wanted to give that a thumbs up. They were mentioning that earlier on, and yes, we could do with a lot more nuance and a lot less sledgehammer. All white people are terrible and this is it's down with the patriarchy stuff, a bit of nuance in there. Absolutely, I'm in full agreement with that comment. But as I was saying
Yeah, and I'm
before.
sorry, that's Magus of Vicanti, and thank you for sharing that. He says,
Yeah, thanks, mate. Yeah.
nuance, huh? It's saddening to think that James Gunn is unique in that respect in Hollywood now.
Yeah, I don't know if he's unique, but certainly I really really loved it. And just to follow on, yeah, well, what a lot of people want, Mario, I think, obviously I wear my Zakalite t-shirt with pride. I'm an absolute Snyder bot, whatever you want to call that. I'm committed to the cause. I'm active in that cause. I donate and all the rest of the stuff that you're supposed to do. But I was horrified to see the divisiveness that particular scene caused. And I have never really come across that. And I've heard this accusation thrown around before, and I've never actually seen it myself. But, I know they're out there, and are a bunch of toxic Snyder fans that are worse than Walter Hamada for our movement. The way that these guys go on and attack every single DC property that doesn't have, essence de Snyder on it, and attacking it as the worst thing ever, and I'm never gonna, it's terrible, and fuck James Gunn, he's making these characters into a joke, and that's not what Zach would have done. Well, that's probably not what Zach would have done, but guess what? This is a comedy show. It's the Suicide Squad. It's got the essence to James on it, not essence to Zach. It's going to be a different thing. And they were going absolutely crazy. And some of the things they were saying, it was vile. And it's like, guys, if we really want the Snyderverse restored, you may as well be opening your legs and giving our detractors full reign to kick us straight in the bollocks, because you can literally just single these people out, as Ann Sarnoff did with the Aya cut. She said those people are toxic, and it's a tiny percentage, but if they keep doing this, it's so easy for Screen Rant and CBR and all those sort of things to go online, find those quotes, and then we're all toxic Snyder fans, and we are not. It's a good-hearted movement. We want what we want, not to the exclusion of everything else. So if they want to go ahead and do Flashpoint and change a bunch of things and make that the DC cinematic universe, fine. If I want to go and watch it, I'll go and watch it. Why can't we have both? And I think that people going on there attacking people for liking Sasha Calle's Supergirl, or attacking people for wanting a Batgirl movie, they can like what they like. You don't have to like it. You don't have to go and see the Wonder Twins movie. We just want Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck, and that. And can we finish that story and then we'll move on? That's all that we want. And I think it's really really damaging to our movement when people go on a hate rant like that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Mario Lopez says their appearance, meaning the Justice League, only confirms that what people want is the sequel to the Justice League movie, and
Hmm.
that they know that, but they will not give that to us.
Well, we don't know, Mario, because here's the thing. All of our hopes now are pinned on one man, and that one man is David Zaslav of Warner Discovery. And in next month, in March, they're taking over, and then we'll see, because we'll know, lickety spit, whether the Snyderverse is going to be restored or not. I'm very much of the opinion that it will be, especially if this show takes place afterwards. There, James Gunn is being touted as Kevin Feige of the DCEU. I've heard that that's a rumor going around at the moment. I don't know how true it is, but he's big mates with Zack Snyder. I think it makes all sorts of sense to do it. I think why the current leadership. There's rumors that they're on their way out. By the way, that they're going to be fired. I don't know about Hamada, but certainly the other two, Sarnoff and the other one, are on their way out. Is the rumor, and those guys. I think you have to understand how they feel. They're very, very powerful people, and they made decisions that were ultimately proved to be awful decisions. They made massive, massive mistakes in the way that they managed the DCEU. They mandated cuts from Batman versus Superman, and then we all saw the ultimate cut, and it was like, oh, so that was the genius movie we would have got, and not this incoherent mess that we actually did get. And then they went with Whedon for Justice League, and then AT&T wanted to put something on HBO Max, and then we got the glory that is Zack Snyder's Justice League. And you can imagine what these guys feel like. They've just been made to look utterly, utterly incompetent. This happened on their watch, and that's why they're anti Zack Snyder. Like he's proven them completely wrong. So if I'm Zaslav and I'm a new broom and I'm getting James Gunn in and I'm looking at HBO Max and I'm looking at the demand from fans out there that will be loyal. That's the one thing you can say about the Snyder fans is they're quite fanatically loyal to this guy, and they will subscribe and they won't stream it illegally. They will pay money to watch this stuff, and fingers crossed.
Yeah, it's very good point. Mario Lopez says there are toxic people everywhere, and I believe they are always a small minority. While Tom Jr. Jackson says, I really want to see that Wonder Twins film. I was a fan as a kid. Magus of Vicanti says, the DC Comics multiverse has always been about having only a very loose unifying force in its multiverse with relatively isolated stories. I found, at least maybe until recently. So Snyder can keep being Snyder and Gunn can keep being Gunn. I'm pretty sure Zadloff would recognize that.
I hope so. I mean, it seems to make all sorts of sense, that would be the way that they go, because we understand it was always, well, we can't have Batman on TV and in the cinema, people will get confused. And it's like, well, people aren't that stupid. But that veil or that excuse or whatever you want to call it seems to have been lifted now. Thank you, Spider-Man No Way Home. People got it that, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are from different universes. No, we're not thick. We get it. And that's kind of opened the door even more for Snyderverse continuity on HBO Max. Give us the Batman Deathstroke movie. We want to see, or the miniseries, whatever. Everybody wants Henry Cavill back. Why can't we have that?
We all want Henry Cavill.
We certainly do.
And Mario Lopez says, to me, they could do it even without Zack Snyder if necessary.
I think they could, but I think that would be a misstep, Mario. In that, what the restore the Snyderverse fans, what we really want is for that guy to be able to complete his vision. We'd love a Batfleck TV show. Snyder doesn't have to, Snyder could produce or not even be involved with it at all. Ben Affleck is perfectly capable of doing all that stuff himself. I think with Justice League, however, that man was treated very, very poorly. His work was proven to be genius. Okay, indulgent, but that was kind of the point of it. It was not cut down. It was everything that he wanted to show. This is what I wanted, and it's long, and give the guy his dues, give the fans what they want, and they will reward you with their loyalty. You can see the schism that's happened with Lord of the Rings. What
Right.
happens when you attack the fan base, or if the fan base perceives it's being attacked, they'll go for the throat. Just give us what we want, and everyone will be happy, and they'll support your product forevermore, and they'll love you for it. Seems very simple to me.
Yeah, and you make such a great point. Tom Jr. Jackson says James Gunn wrote Dawn of the Dead, which Snyder directed. I'm sure that they are friends. And we have another comment by Magus of Vacanti, who says also multiverse in its multiverse. My apologies this morning. I must be working for the Department of Redundancy Department. Okay, that's okay.
I hear you. I
That's
hear
all
you.
right.
Just
Michael
one last.
Litos,
Oh, sorry. Yes.
I'm sorry, Michael Litos says, how upset do you think Kevin Feige is with Alan Horn? Go
He'll
ahead, Russ.
he'll be pissed off if these rumors are true, Mikey, that uh, James Gunn takes over that position in Warner Brothers. Yeah, absolutely. He'll be going crazy because James Gunn's a very very talented man. The one thing I wanted to say just on the Snyder stuff as well was on Valentine's Day, Snyder just put out one of his cryptic Justice League quotes, which gives us all a lot of hope. It was Happy 214, and there was a quote from Excalibur. I will ready my knights for battle to defend defend the past and the dream of what yet could be, which is an Excalibur quote. I love Excalibur; it's one of my favorite films, and I didn't know it was his favorite film, and now I feel like a proper Snyder bro. But the way that nothing that he posts like this is a mistake. There was like the six tables, the round table and the six chairs around it that he posted, and this one, if you look at how the picture is framed, it's got Justice League, and then the 214 of the date, the Valentine's Day, February 14th. Underneath the Justice League, it's got the two, and then it's got the Zack Snyder next to it. It almost looks like it's saying Zack Snyder's Justice League 2. So I think I cannot believe that Snyder would be teasing this stuff if he didn't know something, because this is exactly what happened in the run up to release the Snyder Cut. All of this stuff was, is it real? And fans, one fan said, is it really real? And he said, yes, of course it's real. Another fan, I think I said this last week actually, said, look, should we just give up hope? And Snyder was like, never give up hope. So I think it's coming.
Yeah, and Magus of Vacanti says, The Rock wants Cavill most of all. That was his most important condition for doing Black Adam, that he would fight Cavill Superman. Magus of Vacanti, I want Cavill most of all. So,
But how sick would that be, Mega? So, like to see, because, they're both big dudes. I mean, and that would be a proper superpowered SmackDown. You can only hope. We'll know. Look, man, we'll know soon, won't we? We will know soon enough.
we will. And Mario Lopez says, is he saying, but Warner Brothers and Zack Snyder are not in good terms? Is
That's
that
correct, and that's the same with Ben Affleck, which is why Ben Affleck, to someone said, no, I'm not doing this anymore, because Ben Affleck had a terrible experience with both Warner Brothers and Joss Whedon, and the current heads of Warner Brothers have treated Snyder like a bag of shit, and it's no wonder he's gone off to Netflix, because they've given him complete creative freedom to do what he wants to do. And I think I said last week as well, but if I'm Zaslav, and my mission is to make HBO Max a competitor to Disney, a real competitor to Disney Plus and um, Netflix. I don't want this guy that is so beloved by a massive swathe of my customers working over there. I'll give him what he wants. I'll let him do what he wants. And that the same is probably true for Ben Affleck. I'm sure Ben Affleck would come back given the right creative freedom, the right money, the right project. Why not? They're professionals at the end of the day.
I agree. And Mario Lopez further says, I said that, but please note, Zack Snyder is my favorite director.
You have
So
impeccable taste, my friend.
thank you for clearing that up for us, Mario Lopez. And it is wonderful to see you this morning, sharing your opinions with us. Any last thoughts about the Peacemaker, Russ?
Long may it continue. I hope. I think. I trust in James Gunn. I suspect that he's got a 3 to 5 series arc, and I don't think Peacemaker will outstay its welcome. I rather feel that character will have his time in the sun, and there'll be spin-offs amongst spin-offs amongst spin-offs. But I hope that it's got a beginning, middle, and end, and then we move on. And I'm sure James Gunn is smart enough. But I cannot wait for season 2.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And I think that I hope that this is a direction that we're going in. It just really, as far as I'm concerned, was maybe the most realistic and modern version of, they always say that they want to have put a modern spin on things. They always want to, make it relevant. I think this is what was the most modern version and perhaps the most relevant version of a show I've seen, not just in the superhero franchise, but just on TV in general. I think this one was
Uh,
it's a masterpiece to me. This is, I'm sorry, that's what I'm
yeah.
going to say. It
To
is.
quote Peacemaker from the Suicide Squad, it was dope as fuck.
Yes, it was dope as fuck, and I want so much more. And something else I wanted to say is that sometimes when I'm watching a show, there are parts that's hard for me to watch. It could be anything. It could be like someone cuts themselves, and I'm like, ouch.
Hmm.
But this one, I was able to kind of like take the good with the bad, and I was surprised by that. And I'm referring to the fact that he does kind of kill someone who comes back. I'm not going to say who it is because I
Mm.
just don't want to say it. But
Mm-mm.
and I found that that was very interesting because
I
they
think you
didn't
can you
want
can
you.
say our own because we did give a hectic spoiler warning.
Okay,
So you
Peacemaker
know.
kills his own father, but what I liked about the fact the father coming back is that he can't erase his father's memory. He just can't do it. This isn't Men in Black where you can just kind of erase the memories and
Mm.
you can forget about all that. This is his father, and memories of his father and his brother are going to be with him for his entire lifetime. And for me, that's what that his dad kind of hanging around. It's almost get me teary eyed here
Mm.
represents because and I thought that that was just such a
Well,
mature way, sophisticated
literally,
way.
he's going to have to always live with the ghost of his father.
Yes.
That's literally that shot literally was that. You will always have my ghost hanging over you. I made you what you are. You can pretend that you don't want to kill people anymore. You can pretend that you came from somewhere else, but you didn't. I made you what you are, and you can never change. That's the ghost in his mind, and that's always going to be there for a jokey dope of a character like Peacemaker. As we were saying about to go full circle nuance, as we were talking about before, to give a character like that so much depth and pathos and tragedy, and yet have fart and dick jokes in the same show. Come on, James Gunn,
And
hats off,
threesomes.
mate. Yeah.
And classic metal, classic glam rock,
Hmm.
it's so honestly, I was quite affected by that because and I was not expecting to be affected by that, but I can laugh at it, like there's so it was really the full package. This was sort of like everything you wanted in a story and more for me.
Hmm.
I've never been this and this is going to sound somewhat sexual, but I've never been this satisfied in a story before. So
Wow. Well, and I can imagine it takes a lot to satisfy you, Aram. So I think if Peacemaker delivered on every level,
yes.
it seems like.
Yes, it certainly did, and it's a rare occasion that I can say that about any movie or television show or anything. So I just really am somewhat shocked at seeing something like this, and I'm like, we're really lucky. I start to count my blessings and say we're really lucky to get entertainment like this. Um,
100%. 100%. I'm thinking, do we want to? There's two more questions about Snyder, and then I guess we should
yes,
Snyder discuss, and then we should move on
hmm
to our next topic. I'm conscious of time.
absolutely,
Uh,
yes.
so Renz, yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
No, no, you can read it because I've been reading all of them.
Okay, Renz, yeah, I want to experience more of the Nightmare storyline. I hope Zack Snyder's Justice League will continue. I cannot imagine that it will not continue. If that's the case, I wonder if the second one will be all about Nightmare, because I think a lot of that stuff was leaked already, and it had a plot with Lois Lane and Bruce Wayne, and they got together after Superman died, and all this sort of thing. I don't know if they're going to address that now. They may well change it, but everybody wants to see more of Jared Leto now, especially after David Ayer he released a little sneaky peek of this is my cut stuff. So everyone's hyped for that. I really hope so too, Renz. Of course I do. I've made no secret of the fact where my loyalties and my bias lie on that
Mhm.
particular one. What else
And
we got?
hello to I can't read this. Is it Sia Dream? Sia Dream.
See a dream,
Great
yeah.
content and good morning. Well, good morning to you, See a Dream. And we have another great comment from Magus of Vicanti. Would you like to read that one as well,
Sure.
Russ?
Zaslav wants to make money. The Snyder Cut was a proven money maker. I don't see Zaslav killing that gravy train just to sate some executives. He's probably going to end up firing at this rate. Please, got all the gods, whichever gods you pray to or don't pray to or whatever you worship. That's what we as Snyder fans are all hoping. We don't want much. We're not saying theatrical release change the direction of the entire DCEU to fit our, little nerdy demands. We would just like to see that those two movies completed, and long may it continue in miniseries. Let's have a Man of Steel miniseries. Let's have a Batfleck miniseries. Let's keep it separate from the continuity that they want to make in the cinema. Great. Why can't we have both? That's it.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. And as far as I'm concerned, I definitely want to. Everybody wants to see more of the Justice League. There
Mm.
isn't anybody out there who is saying they don't want to see more of the Justice League. They'll just be honest about it. And Russ, last week when you and I were talking, I had brought to your attention that I guess it was either physical media, 4K, Blu-ray,
Hmm.
one of those lists of the top selling physical medias, either 4K or Blu-ray. Uh, the Justice League is still in that list of top 10 and continues to be a top seller as we go through the months and months and
It's been a
weeks and
year since
months.
it's come out. In March,
Yeah,
it's going to be a year since Zack Snyder's Justice League came out. I forget when the physical media release was, but nearly a year that disc has lived in the physical media top 10. A year. So to go back to what Megas is saying here, yeah, it's making them money, and people will buy it, and they'll buy the special edition, and they'll buy the one with the black and white version on it, and they'll buy the one with the director's comment. I will. I'll go. I've bought the 4K of Batman, Superman, Man of Steel, and Zack Snyder's Justice League. I don't have a 4K telly or a 4K player, but I went and bought it. Why? Because I want to say to Warner Brothers, take my money. This is what I want.
absolutely. And I think that it certainly is. I think that it's just this quality that we're seeing in it that we're not seeing in other places too, that is resonating. And I think that it's very we're just really lucky to have gotten it. And when I think back to people wanting to have that cut released for so long,
Hmm.
and then it happening, I think that more good things are definitely on the way for that. And it's exciting. I haven't been this excited about an IP in a while, and it feels really good, Russ. I feel really good about it. It's putting a smile on my face. So um shall we try and conquer this Lord of the Rings situation? I mean, I've kind of thought about it, and for me, um I think that this, so let's say you have all the money in the world, you have a limitless amount of money, and we've all kind of like fantasized and said, if I had as much money in the world, so I could just do whatever I want to do. What would I do? And clearly, one of those wishes for the Amazon owner, Bezos, is to make this particular series. It while I'm not going to say that he's a purist for Lord of the Rings, there
Clearly
was
not.
something that, well, yeah, I mean, I'm not quite sure, but there was something in him that drove him to want to make the series because he spent so much money to acquire it. At least this is how I'm looking at it.
Hmm.
And I think that, as I was discussing with other people earlier in the week, that when you have Amazon as your advertising, you pretty much are advertising to maybe half of the planet, because
Mm.
every time someone goes onto Amazon, they don't need television to advertise. They just need their apps and website, and they support other apps, which means that if you subscribe to, let's say, HBO through Amazon, or another provider through Amazon, you still see advertisements for Amazon style shows.
Hmm.
Even if you're buying, let's say a garbage pail on Amazon, whether it's in the United States or the UK or whatever country you're in, they advertise their shows on it. I mean, it's one of the most expansive advertising marketing things that exist in probably in the world, maybe maybe the most expansive one, you can't buy that level of advertisement. And for them, it's free. It's free because it's on their platform. So for the
100%.
next, yeah, for the next, I don't know, 5 or 6 months before the show comes out, you're going to constantly see every time you turn on Amazon, if you have Prime, if you have Amazon app, if let's say are watching Amazon and but you're not watching Prime TV, but you're watching an app on Prime, which they support, you're going to constantly see this trailer come up, and it's going to be constantly there.
Mm.
And I think for me, that means, to them at least, they know that the key to having people tune in to shows is marketing. They know this already. And it's going to be a success for them because, as far as they're concerned, if they can, just go ahead and shower you with this advertisement over and over again to a point where this is the first thing you see in the morning when you click on your phone, and then when you go to sleep at night, you turn off your phone, look at Amazon, it's the last thing that you see. They've
Mm.
just shown you twice a show that they want you to know about, and it's impossible to ignore it. It's impossible to ignore this Lord of the Rings, for me, from an advertising point of view. And I think, and the reason why I'm even saying that is because in the fall, when the Wheel of Time came out, which a lot of people either liked or disliked, they did something very similar. As soon as you turn on your TV, Wheel of Time, Wheel of
Mm.
Time. You
Mm.
cannot escape it. You cannot escape it. You turn on the thing, you type in something else, they'll advertise Wheel of Time in front of your show.
Yeah. I
So,
think I think I agree with you in part. I think um, obviously you work with Robert Meyer Burnett. I'm a huge fan of Rob's. I listen to his show all the time, and I think ultimately, yeah, you can throw all the money and advertising as you want, and you can probably get millions upon millions upon millions of eyes on because of that advertising. But ultimately, the eyes will only stay on based on the quality of what you are producing. And if that show sucks, and if that show is another Watchmen sequel where it was everything was about agenda and the story was secondary, if this becomes about telling a better story than what Tolkien could, because now we're going to inject our politics into this story, you'll lose people. Um, there's been so much discussion about the representation of people that were not. We spoke about this before. It's England, it's Northern Europe, it's England. There were not people of color there. That's what Tolkien wrote, and I've listened to people bending and turning themselves inside out, trying, grasping for. Oh well, there were some elves that walked away, and it's like, look, fuck off. It was not. That's not the story. It's not the story. If you're going to adapt the story, adapt the story. I was reminded. I saw a quote from Peter Jackson, who said our mission very much was not to inject any of our own politics or themes into this story. We are telling Tolkien's story, and
mhm.
they are now regarded as probably better than Star Wars, probably the finest trilogy of movies made in the whole history of movies because they just stuck to that mission. So I don't know. It's been hugely divisive. Some people are saying it was meant to be divisive so it will get bums on seats and people are talking about it. But it's almost like I was listening to your show last night actually with Robert and Lael as I was frantically trying to get home in time from from Bath to make this show. And Rob makes a good point. It this kind of identity politics being thrust into every single show is getting very, very preachy. And why are you doing it? We are not stupid. We know, we understand, we get Lord of the Rings, and it's okay to have it Northern European. That's fine. Tell a story with diverse people south of Mordor. We're there all day for it. If you're Jeff Bezos and you want to do your Game of Thrones, well, here's what you do. You throw money at the best writers and the best producers. You give them $1 billion and you say, hey, guys, here's all the money in the world. Come up with a fantasy world for me and I want it in 3 years. And everybody would be there for it all day. Nobody would be pissed off. We'd all be going, yes, this is awesome. Look at this fantasy world that we've craved for so long. It might even be better than Lord of the Rings. Who knows? But they didn't. They said, no, we want that property and now we're going to make it better. Well, no, you can't. It's Lord of the Rings, mate. Just leave that alone and do your own thing. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, you make a very good point, and we are going to discuss this in detail. I just want to say good morning to Daryl Brewer. Good morning,
Hey, man.
Daryl. Thank you so much for joining us. And we do have some comments. Mario Lopez says it's the Amazon strategy for the Lord of the Rings show is a total disaster. And Mike Alito says, not to mention, every time you look up something on IMDb, there's an advertisement for
Ye
Lord of the
true
Rings,
true
right?
say, Mikey, true say, absolutely, yeah, because 'cause I'm on there fairly frequently.
And this is exactly what I was referring to, is that people are still going to watch the show. And I certainly do agree with everything you said, Russ. But what I was going to say is that while it is true that the story, we don't know what the story is, we just don't
Mm.
know it. Um, if the story is not great, people are still going to watch the show in the millions, Russ, in the millions, because it's almost not going to be their fault, because this has been shown to them and they are interpreting this. People who know nothing about the Lord of the Rings, because there are people who just have heard of it, but they really don't know anything about it. And they're going to think that this is it, and they're going to like it and say, wow, this is amazing story. You
If it is
know,
our that's my point, and to Tom's point,
even if
if
it
it is
isn't,
good, I think
even
people
if
will
it
switch
isn't.
off. I think
Yeah.
people will switch, you the thing is, with the platforms like Amazon, HBO, Disney, all the rest of them, there is so much shit out there, you don't have to sit and watch shit that you don't like. So, like, if this Lord of the Rings thing sucks, well, then there's the Wheel of Time. And if you don't like that, you've got Netflix, and you've got The Last Kingdom, and you've got Vikings, and you've got, whatever you want, it's out there. So if this show sucks in the same way that Watchmen sucked because it was so keen to be right on, I think it was Rob was saying last night that the writers are trying to sort of outwoke each other. If it is that, it'll suck. And I respectfully disagree. I think people have got so much content at their fingertips now. They're not they want quality, like Jack Reacher, same channel, stayed pure to the books. Nobody can get enough of Jack Reacher. It's the best show on TV at the moment, right? Apart from
Well,
Peacemaker.
I am going to comment about Jack Reacher, and there's so much more that we're going to discuss about this.
Hmm.
And I think you make excellent points. I just feel like, because Tolkien, and I kind of am reiterating what I was saying a few shows already, but Tolkien didn't just write, a story. It was essentially a magnum opus, right,
Hmm.
Russ? And that means that it was like an extraordinary level and quality of work. He was a linguistic genius.
It's his life's
And
work.
and
His
and
life's
he
work.
yes, and what he produced, they had a wonderful not documentary, movie about Tolkien,
Hmm.
that was made a few years ago. Actually, it was maybe last year, about his life. And what was very interesting was that when he was at university, I guess it's called, they wanted to send him down, or something like that. They essentially
Expel
wanted
him. They wanted to expel him. Yeah.
Yes, they wanted to expel him because they did not understand what he was doing, because no one had ever done anything like this before. Or let's say, technically speaking, maybe it had been 1,000 years since the last person on earth wrote anything like this.
Mm.
Something that was as transformational, something that was as creative, creating a new world, creating new languages, creating, a new idea of what it means to rule, and what people were fighting against. This very interesting and intriguing story was more than just, let's say, his PhD thesis, and like he had gone so much farther than, let's say, what would be required at any university at that point, that even, the university members themselves, were just bewildered as to what the goal was. And I find it very interesting because, if you have a level of work that is of that level of expertise, even the ordinary person might say, well, you're kind of going pretty far with this. What's your goal? Like, what is this? and
Hmm.
and clearly what we've gotten is a, a a essentially a culturally significant story. Now it's culturally significant, but he used culturally significant stories where he lived, and incorporated that, or was inspired by those traditions in his stories, and then went even further with it by creating new languages and things. And so, that the incorporation of the history is very interesting, because now you're talking about, what's perhaps more historically significant. Last night we were talking about, having different actors portray different roles. And I said, well, if it's a historical role, people want to see the person look like that historical character.
Hmm.
And this is exactly what we were getting at, is when you change that around, somehow it's not historical anymore, but yet when we watch some Shakespeare stories where we know that the characters may or may not have been a specific group, we're fine with the changes because the story is still excellent. The story is still great
Hmm.
despite people changing around. Like, for example, an example would be Othello, that has been played by different ethnicities all along. Like, we knew that, but we understood what it meant because they very specifically defined what the person's ethnicity was in the story itself. Now, with that being said, it's very difficult to do things like this, and there was a reason why Shakespeare defined that character, because I have a feeling that he had men who played women's roles in his plays, and so
Well,
you
they
needed
were
to
all men, because women weren't allowed to act at the time,
right, and
because
so you needed to
we've moved on as a society, right?
right, but you needed to define, oh, it is Princess so and so coming forward. She,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
the reason why he had to be so clear oftentimes was because he knew that different people would play these roles. And I think that that's very interesting in itself. But the biggest, most important part of it is that the quality of the story was there. You had a quality story. It's resonated for years and years. We have different people of different ethnicities playing Henry V or Macbeth, or we know that now, but it's because the quality of the story was great. Now
Well,
we
they
have a
say how they
similar,
contextualize it are, look,
yes,
Kurosawa did a movie called Rand, which is about
yes,
samurai, right? But it's King Lear. So they changed the story, the entire story changed, and now it's not in Great Britain, it's now in Japan, and it's the same story in a different location. Um, I think if we want to circle it, yes, Shakespeare is entirely different, because I mean, the geezer could write a little bit. There's no doubt about that. He knew what he was on about. I think if we go back to really focus on Lord of the Rings in this particular instance, it's really why. For me, it all comes down to the why. Why would you just do something that flies in the face of a myth that was created for England? And people say the UK. No, England. He was English. We didn't have a mythology. Our stuff was all influenced by the French romance. Even the King Arthur stuff was, basically written by the French. So we didn't have anything. So this is an English thing, you know, and yet somehow it's not, in order to say this is cultural appropriation. Please, won't you stop? It is cultural appropriation in this instance. Why are you doing it? And I think anybody that saw the Midnight Musings last night, I think Rob just summed it up absolutely perfectly. It is preachy. It's we know better than you, and we are going to educate you with our messaging. Please don't do that. We are smart enough to know we want diversity. We really, really do. And to call people, I think I said this last week, man, it's just the go-to response, isn't it? If you don't like this, you're racist. No, no, I'm not. I'm all for diversity when it's called for in its right place. There needs to be more of it. People have been severely underrepresented. We need more stuff. 100%, we need more stuff. Let's create stuff. Let's not go back and redraw everything under a context that it just doesn't work for the time it was written in, doesn't work for the character that you're trying to change. It just stop it. Let's do new stuff. New stuff. Everyone's going to support it.
and there is enough, let's say, lore in the diversity of cultures out there that they could put out new stuff, and they're reluctant to put out new stuff for different reasons. But I hunger to see new stories,
Mm,
with new focuses in new groups, and I could care less if the story is diverse. If it's just all one ethnicity and it's a good story, to me, I'm fine with it. So, but if it's from different ethnicities too, great. But I
yeah.
don't feel like I have to have matching number amounts or reflections. Like, none of that makes any difference to me. Go ahead and make 10 stories, and let's have some traditional African folklore in this stuff. And let me see some African people playing it. Like, this is
Yes.
ridiculous now. We're at a point in Hollywood, as far as I'm concerned, that he could have thrown a ton of money at something like that, and we would have watched it. We would have watched, the kings of, Uganda. We would have been like, what the hell is this?
Or where
Like,
they stock a very good book called Gladiatrix in Uganda. Pick it up, Ugandans, if you if you if you're watching. Oh, just to interject, German Nightmare 1976 says hello. Sorry, I'm an hour late. I'll rewind and watch from the beginning. Dude, I was nearly late. I was on my way back from my mate's house in Bath, which is like 100 odd miles away from here. So no stress. I'm on the show and I was nearly late. So it's all good, mate. What have we got here?
yes. Go ahead. Can you read that one for
Yeah,
me?
sure. The more I learn about Amazon Lord of the Rings, more and more of the premonition creeps over me that it's going to turn out to be high budget fan fiction. But I don't want to put the boot in until we actually start seeing the public reaction. Well, the public reaction has been pretty visceral already. These are Tolkien fans that you've pissed off the entire fan base. The entire fan base is pissed off with this. Does that constitute to a hell of a lot of the viewing audience? Well, as Arum was saying, probably not. There's probably people that weren't even born when Jackson's trilogy was coming out that are going to watch this stuff and think that it's correct. And I just go back to it. You're just changing stuff for the sake of changing it. You're going for the woke points, and you're doing this stuff for no good reason. To me, I find it insulting. But then again, I'm an old man shouting at the clouds, aren't I? So let's hope it's good. I'm not convinced I'm going to watch it. In fact, I probably won't, out of principle, because I'm a grumpy old man that shouts at clouds. But hey, it could be excellent. It could be excellent. But to be honest with you, um, somebody summed it up perfectly. It just looked like a commercial for ladies' sort of sanitary products, like the way she's going. Do you know what I mean? Like, take it, girl, and you can take on the mountain. And there she is, climbing up. It just looked pretty shit, to be honest
Well,
with you.
it's almost as absurd as if it was an advertisement for, let's say, ladies protection. We would start out with that picture of Galadriel in the water,
Yeah,
kind of coming out, and she's like, "You can do whatever you want when you're in
yeah.
this time," and we're
when
like, "No, you can't."
when you're wearing elven pads, I feel so free. I can
Yeah.
climb mountains and kill 100 orcs in my new elven pads. Get them today. It's
It's absolutely like the message that they were sending was so confusing. And I'm going to talk about that. Daryl Brewer goes on to say, I have a few choice words about them telling it better than the author. Yeah, and we know it's absolutely ridiculous. Galadriel armor is not right for a sorceress. It's not even elven armor. We're going to talk about that, Mario, because we know that they didn't even spend any time in making something intricate and beautiful and lovely and the most incredible looking elven armor that you've ever seen. They just didn't do that, at least from what we've seen. Toffee 20, hello, Toffee 20,
hey man.
says, Bath, it is a lovely town.
It is, but I
And
didn't see much of it. I was in watching the boxing with my mate Ben, so I didn't actually get into. But he's closer to Wells actually, but no one probably people haven't heard of Wells. So anyway.
so what I wanted to say, an additional thing that I wanted to say about this is that, you know, marketing is so important when it comes to a show. And
Hmm.
so now we're sort of being, I'm not going to say clobbered, but like I said, when you turn on Amazon or IMDb, as Mike Alito has said, or any app that's supported on there, you're going to see an advertisement for this, whether you like it or not. You turn
Hmm.
on another show, they're going to show you the trailer, whether you like it or not. And as far as I'm concerned, when it came to some of the photos, initial photos where they had pictures of people's hands holding weapons, and I thought, oh, wow, is this going to be a story where they're focusing on, yes, they have the rings, but now these weapons are going to come into play, fantasy style weapons, swords, axes, a staff, like, I'm like, wow, this might be very interesting if they did something like this, only to see more promotional photos, like I said, of the woman of Galadriel in the water that looks like something out of Wild Things,
Mm,
or where she's holding onto a knife on the side of a mountain in armor.
because that's what you do when you go mountain climbing.
You could never climb in armor. We all know this.
Hmm.
And also the part where she is actually wearing some kind of armored outfit, but it looks like a Jean-Paul Gaultier dress. And I think I'd said this before. It really does look like a Jean-Paul Gaultier dress. I think he's turning around in his grave saying, that is my design. You took my design. A lot of his things are shaped like a penis or like kind of like a
Mm.
very sexually it was actually very provocative way to shape an armor on her because it looked like the top of a dress, and then on the sides they just kind of stuck on some, padding, to make it seem like it was something. But the most confusing part for me was during the trailer. There's a scene where there are all these people fighting. They're fighting. It's a fight. This is a bloody battle or whatever, and this guy is standing there with a sword, and they're very kind of crushed. They're compacted in, and I thought to myself, is this a battle or is this a crush? Like, is this are there so many soldiers there that they're pushing against each other and they can't breathe or something? And
Mm,
he starts to scream out like, ah, but it's not a scream that's, I'm gonna die, defending this, and I will die. Ah, it wasn't
mm,
like that kind of, it wasn't a 300 scream. It
mm,
was a, what the hell am I doing here scream. I'm not supposed to be here. I feel very uncomfortable with this. And it felt uncomfortable and looked uncomfortable. And I'm like, I don't want to see that battle. Look at him. He's so uncomfortable. Why portray so many scenes that are very unsure? The love scene between this elf and this woman, they don't look like they love each other. They didn't make him look cool. They didn't make the characters, the woman, she's supposed to be, the dwarf thing, and they have all this gold, and she doesn't have hardly any gold on it. It's like they just threw a necklace on her. I
mm.
mean, what is up with not really following through on these costume designs, on these marketing designs, and a company that has, limitless resources for that? That's the thing that I also was not that happy to see. And I think it kind of sends the wrong message to fans, because this is what we're supposed to get excited about, is what you're showing us. That's not exciting. It's not exciting.
How can you have all of this time? This has been made for a number of years now. I think maybe 2 years it's been underway. How can you have all of this time and all of this money and release the the big statement on Super Bowl day, the thing that's really gonna sell this product? How could it be so average and underwhelming and just meh? It
Yeah,
just looks like they couldn't be, but it's literally, to me, looks like Shannara, which was, I think, an MTV show. It was based on the books that I used to love, and it was appalling. But I loved it because it was cheesy and shit, and I quite enjoyed it, even though I knew it was bad. But it was made for tuppence compared to this show, and it looks like it's Shannara. It just looks really shit, and I
yeah,
fail to see how they managed. uh, How could you fail so hard already? Now, again, we could all be eating our words in 6 months' time, and it could be the greatest thing ever. But on the evidence of my eyes, the the arrogance of the creators who were in charge of Into Darkness, which, let's face it, was another franchise killer. Um, it just doesn't look good. It just doesn't look good. And the one thing you wanted to do, as I say, watching the OneRing.net shill for access is it's repugnant. It's repugnant. These were the guys that were holding Peter Jackson's feet to the fire 20 years ago because he had a bigger role in there for Arwen, and they were like, "No, no, Arwen wouldn't do that," and he changed that story to appease the fan base. And here they are now shilling as hard as they put. It's repugnant. Anyway, enough from
yeah.
me
It,
on
it
that.
really, it really is. And Magus of Vicanti says also another thing. Edwin Land, the founder of Polaroid, once famously said, "Marketing is what you do when your product is no good." Lately, I've been seeing higher ad density for things that not much later ended up being a disaster. And we also have,
True
good
say.
point. We have Mark Mitchell with us. Hello, Mark
Hey,
Mitchell.
man.
And here we have, let's see. Um, I can't do everyone's comments, but Mark Lopez says historical movies must be historical for it, or in a few decades, people will have a totally wrong idea about how the world was in the past. So that's a very interesting.
I
Um,
couldn't I couldn't agree more, Mario. I think that is part of the agenda, isn't it? It's the changing of history. It's trying to put a 21st century lens on things that happened in the past, which were out of order by our own modern standards. But you know what? They happened. this stuff happened. And if you try to rearrange history to fit your own modern sensibilities, and you cut out the parts that you don't particularly like because it doesn't fit with your social construct, then you're doomed to make the same fucking mistakes over and over and over again. And you see this with activists, uh and activism sometimes it is a good thing, but when to use the woke thing, which is what we often talk about on this show, it's almost like a cult, it's like a religion, it's almost fascistic in its zeal, that nothing can be written or printed that isn't on the message, and if it's not on the message, it must be destroyed and wiped out, and if you don't agree, you must be othered and cast out from society. I mean, that's fascist. I'm sorry, but it is. So you cannot judge, even 50 years ago, the people of those times, what they were doing 50 years ago by today's standards. So, as I said earlier on, I think we said society's moved on. In ancient times, you're and up until the medieval times, even, and maybe even Renaissance, your measure as a king was how much arse you kicked, how much land you conquered. Certainly the Romans, if you wanted to be a politician in Rome, you'd better have fucked up some barbarians pretty badly, otherwise you didn't have a political career, because nobody would take you seriously. So Julius Caesar actively went out and started fights and invaded places to gain political capital, because that's how the world was at the time. Is that cool? No, of course not. But at the time, that was what we did. And now you're going to turn that round and go, oh no, it was also terrible, and he was a terrible person. Well, yes, by our modern standards, he probably was. But back in those days, half the population of Rome thought he was awesome.
Yeah, it's a good point. And Tom Jr. Jackson says, are we as fans becoming too protective of certain IPs to the point that it's making people jaded? This is a good point. We're all going to watch the show, so I hope none of us feel jaded, but it is something to think about. And, Russell, you did talk about how it has been causing divisiveness in the fandom. So I think that there is something to that. Daryl Brewster, and I think we all agree with this, we need more originality. Definitely. And oh, look at this. German Nightmare in 1976 says, well, I just ordered Russ's 3 Gladiators books. Cheers, mate.
Oh, you're a legend. Thank you so much. I hope they don't disappoint you. The first one's not very good, I'm sorry, but the second 2 are okay. So I hope you enjoy it. There is a German girl in the first one, though. She's actually it takes place in the same universe as Donna Gillespie's book, so I'll give you that much. So I did a little bit of a crossover with that. So yes, thank you so much, German Nightmare. It's very much appreciated. You're a superstar. Cheers, mate.
And Daryl Brewer says, I've got to head out, but have a good rest of the day, everyone. Take care. Well, take care to you, Daryl Brewer.
Cheers, Daryl.
And we have another person who's come. I think it's KEK 44. Well, howdy, KEK 44. And so there's also one more member who just joined us, Dwayne Oldson, and Dwayne mentions movies and shows like these are going to be dated in the same ways that movies of 1970 are dated. Casablanca remains eternal. Dr. No is largely so, and Live and Let Die is a period beyond words.
Yes, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't mess
I
with the
agree.
classics. They're classics for a reason, right? You sometimes you just have to leave well alone and say yes, it is. You see, even in recent times with all the remakes and stuff like that, they very rarely live up to uh, the original in which they were based. There was RoboCop, which was an okay film, but it's never going to be proper RoboCop, is it? It's never going to beat that. They did the same with Total Recall. My God, how can you fail when you've got Kate Beckinsale in the film? Yeah, it was not very good, but Kate Beckinsale, Colin Farrell, and Jessica Biel. Oh my God, Jennifer Beals. Which one? I can't think which one it was. Jessica, wasn't it? Yeah, but it was a great film.
Yeah, and that's a very good point that you're making. Mario Lopez says Amazon could buy instead the 3 Dungeons and Dragons and Dragonlance. You remember I was talking to you about Dragonlance?
Oh, it's so cool. I was
Russ?
thinking about that in the car when I was driving back, because you guys were talking about some anime or something that
Yes,
you've been
Vox
watching.
Machina, and how it's
Right.
connected to the Dungeons and Dragons. Because I'd said it reminds me of that, and someone was like, "Well, Artem, it is actually part of the Dragonlance." I'm sorry, the the D&D universe. I said, oh, I didn't know that. I said, it reminds me so much of it. And it reminded me of the cartoon I used to watch uh, in the 80s. Gee, that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Um, but wouldn't that be cool, Mario? I think that's something that they should have done.
I wish they
And
had.
Russ, I was talking to you about Dragonlance and wanting to review the books, and
Hmm.
and I was like, yeah, I just really liked the nostalgia area that brought us into for that series. But the other thing, the final thing that I want to say about Lord of the Rings is this: I view the Lord of the Rings as classical literature.
Mm,
Now, I don't know how many people do that. I think that it's a fantasy book that's surpassed just sort of like casual, fun fantasy experience. I don't think that it's, sort of like on the same level as some other fantasy novels. I think that it's quite profound,
mm,
and the level of what it's achieved, and the influence that it has had over our lives culturally. It's there. It's culturally significant work beyond England now, Russ.
of course, yeah, absolutely. It's a global thing. It's an English thing, but it's for the world, right?
And
Um,
so when it
yeah.
comes to classical literature, what kind of latitudes do you think they should be allowed to have? I mean, we do see people who do one woman and one man shows, and they might take, Oedipus and do a twist on it, and, do their own version of it. But, is this is not a performance based show that we're watching. This isn't, an actor or an auteur who's taking something and saying, I'm going to put a twist on this and make it an interesting story, like an adaptation like Kurosawa did
Hmm.
with I think you said it was King Lear, with the King
Ran,
Lear
yeah.
with Rand. That's not what we're seeing. That clearly was an auteur who said, I'm going to take it and make it about feudal Japan. And it was a beautiful adaptation of it. What
Hmm.
we're seeing are perhaps maybe not adaptations that are up to par. And so, I wanted to delineate that, because we can't confuse an artist who takes this seriously, who's taking the material seriously, and will tell you, well, I wanted to convey this. We're kind of like being told that they are serious about their messages, but it feels very different. And I think the reason why it feels different is just because they're not able to get to the level where the story is actually an effective storytelling.
Agreed.
Uh,
I think, Rob summed it up. He summed it up very, very well. I can only just repeat what he said. It's agenda before story. That's what it seems like, and it's destined to fail if that's what they're trying to do. They are trying to say, we know better than you, we know better than Tolkien, we know better than everybody. We are going to do this to this story because we know best. And it's like, no, you don't. But we will see. We will see. Hey, Stubble.
Hi, Stubble and Shay. Thank you for joining us. And as you guys know, Stubble and I have reviewed Wheel of Time on this channel.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to check out our videos on the Wheel of Time, please do. And we're going to be going more into the Wheel of Time books, if Stubble is all right with it, in the future for sure. And it's great to see you as always. Um,
Absolutely.
Now, Stubble mentioned something that I had not thought about. And of course, we are all goof people, Stubble. He says that he's worried about the Shogun series. I hope it's as good as the miniseries from the 80s. And honestly, Stubble and Russ, I remember the miniseries from the 80s, and it was quite cinematic and theatrical for a television program. It felt like you were at a movie. And, I really loved it. And I think that they kept it simple for a reason. They didn't want to, kind of veer away too much from the seriousness of what was going on, because it was a serious story. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it really was. It was not a comedy. There were no light moments, as far as I'm concerned, and that's fine, because it was a serious story. What do you think, Russ? Do you think that they can recreate that magic from Shogun, the Wat Karimaska, and all that sort of stuff that we saw on television so many years ago, in from a piece of work that has a serious nature, and perhaps is not at all, should not really be modernized, in the very least, at all? It should not be. What do you think?
I I feel I had no idea, Stubble, that they were going to remake Shogun. Again, why mess with perfection? That show is the shit. I've got it. I was just literally thinking I've got that DVD box set in the room next door, and I'm thinking, should I fucking put Shogun on tonight? Like, I haven't seen that for years. It was so awesome. The book was awesome. It was actually based on a real guy. There was an Englishman that actually ended up over there and becoming a samurai. I had no idea, Stubble, that they were going to make a new Shogun. I can only imagine that this is so we're supposed to be positive fandom. It's going to be brilliant. I hope it's going to be fantastic. I really, really hope it's going to be great. But every time I hear something like this, I'm just instantly thinking, oh God, what are they going to do to Shogun? What are they going to do to Shogun? But hopefully, Blackthorn will be as heroic as he is, and not some sort of beta male cut guy that just follows follows around and doesn't do a lot. I don't know. I hope it kicks ass, because it certainly could kick ass, given if you think about how things have moved on since Richard Chamberlain's day. I mean, this could be a bloody, violent, brutal exploration of an Englishman shipwreck with his Dutch buddies and all of that kind of thing. It could be awesome. But I worry, like you, yeah. I'll look into it, mate. Maybe we can touch on more on it next week.
Well, my comments to that would be yes, it is positive fandom. And while we are critical of certain things, we certainly, are trying to stay on the positive side of things. And we
Yes.
are going to look critically at things and say, well, I would have liked this to have happened, or, what are your predictions for this? We're not really trying to reduce the use of the word HATE, because I don't want to use that word
Hmm.
too much. But at the same time, we are expressing our true feelings, and we do want to remain positive. We're going to still watch these shows when they come out. And I really do hope that the Lord of the Rings blows our minds away, because that's what I want. I want that experience. I want to be like, oh my God, did you see that? I want to see that
Hmm.
as far as I'm concerned.
I'm the same there
Um,
about Shogun, because I love Shogun. I loved the book when I was a kid. I read it so many times. So I hope it kicks ass. I hope it's just bloody and violent and X-rated, hardcore fucking ninjas and coolness. That's what I
yes,
hope. It's got
me too.
samurai and ninjas. You cannot fail, guys. You've got
Yes,
samurai and ninjas in the same
yes.
show.
Well, it's
Mm,
our fantasy, because we've had our samurai and ninja fantasies,
mhm,
not entirely accurately historically satisfy these desires through video games now.
mhm,
And
mhm.
like, think about, practically so many of these video games are using sort of, let's say, Eastern style fighting styles, and a very loose interpretation of Eastern style fighting styles in
Yep.
these video games. And maybe the Ghost of Tsushima was the most recent game that had, let's say, I don't know how historically accurate it is, so I'm not going to go there, but let's
Mhm.
just say the beauty of the game was how beautiful it looked, and how even the Japanese people had said that they thought it was an incredible game. But we're living up to these standards now, that a video game had such a wonderful interpretation of a culture at
Yep.
that time. And they even had a Kurosawa mode where it's in black and white. You can play the game in black and white,
That's
like as
so
if it
cool.
was. It was just unbelievable. So they have to live up to standards of stuff that we're even seeing in a video game production. Um, it's not easy for them to get to that level, let's say, in a live action, which I think is maybe might be even more difficult to accomplish. But it's something to think about. um Tom Jr. Jackson says, do you think Amazon will ruin their reputation if the Rings of Power doesn't power up to your demand? I don't think they'll ruin their reputation ever. But it's something to think about. What do you think, Russ? Do you think they'll ruin their reputation if the show is not?
Financially, they can throw a couple of billion at this, and it's not even going to scratch the surface. So it's not going to be a disaster. And I think reputationally, will it ruin them? No. Will it be damaging? Yes. I think Jeff Bezos will take it rather personally if his show, his I want my Game of Thrones, which is what he said, which is literally the antithesis, was written as the antithesis of Lord of the Rings in fantasy terms. If that show sucks balls, heads are going to roll, right? Heads are going to roll, because he's spent a lot of money on it, and he's wanting a product of quality. And I think it will look really, really shit. I mean, we got Stubble on the stream. I don't know how good or how poor Wheel of Time was to you are the ultimate Wheel of Time super fan. So I hope it was lived up to all of your expectations. But yeah, I think it won't be monumentally bad, but there's a vast swathe of the internet, which is becoming more and more the new face of fandom, if you like, the new face of film criticism. The knives, the knives are already not even been sharpened; they're already out. They're waiting to basically attack Julius Caesar and the Senate on Lord of the Rings at this point, and they're going to stab it to death if it's not awesome. That's what I think will happen. It'll be raked over the coals if it's shit.
Well, thank you, Russ. And Dwayne Olson, I think I really love this comment, Dwayne. He says Tolkien has risen to the level of Shakespeare and Dante, best
Mhm.
of the best of the best. A Michelangelo in words, very few rise that high. Fops at Amazon do not outdo the Pieta in words. What's a fop? What does that stand for again?
Like a dandy,
Okay.
sort of a wimp poser.
Hmm.
Mm,
Yeah, I agree. The Pieta, of course, is a beautiful sculpture of, let's say Mary holding Jesus, who after he's come down from the cross,
mm,
and it's really one of the most beautiful sculptures ever done. And they also have paintings of the Pieta, I guess, more or
yeah.
less. But the point is, I agree that it is a level of Shakespeare, and I kind of do students study Tolkien in school? Like,
Not
do they?
yet. I don't know. Perhaps maybe The Hobbit. But Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings would be a really weighty tome for somebody to have to do for their, I don't know what you call them in the States, their O levels, their A levels, year 16 and year 18-year-old exams. I don't know. I wish they would, but I wonder, is it old enough yet to be a classic? I couldn't tell you.
I think it is. This is my personal opinion. I mean, there are some books from the 30s, like The Pearl by I think it's by Pearl Buck. I could be wrong. That I studied, and they felt that that was important classical literature. So I'm thinking, yeah, maybe it is, and maybe it's something to
Or
think about. I'm sorry.
perhaps it's the genre. I think even if you look at our sort of arena of films and telly and all that sort of thing, when it comes to sort of awards time, science fiction and fantasy especially, it's just sort of a little bit spat on, isn't it? I mean, I know Return of the King won all of those Oscars, because they kind of had to give them the Oscars at the end of it, but it almost felt like they were gimmies, like they actually had to deliver these Oscars. But by and large, it's not a very respected genre, and I think Lord of the Rings has for me transcended genre, but perhaps to the powers that be, it has not. So I don't know. I wish it was studied. It's a fantastic story, isn't it?
Well, it's something to think about, Russ, because we're looking for books and stories of inspiration. And it's true, you may not read like every single Lord of the Rings, page. You may not read all the works,
Hmm.
but the fact remains is that it's been one of the most influential literature sources in the world, Russ.
Hmm.
And I think that that significance alone might garner some merit for it to be studied, just in a regular curriculum. I think, there's a lot to learn from it. And, just even inspiring other people to do stuff like this.
Well, it
Um,
completely has. If you go to the bookshop and you go onto Amazon, whatever, every single fantasy book on there owes probably owes its conception to Lord of the Rings. People weren't doing it before. Yeah, we had King Arthur and all Beowulf and all that stuff, but the fantasy as a genre was invented pretty much by Tolkien. Maybe Robert E. Howard fans might argue with me on that, but Conan and Cimmeria were not high fantasy, were they? This is the invention of high fantasy, the quests, the wizards, the this, that, and the other.
yes.
Conan was a lot more down and dirty.
And as I mentioned before, one other thing that, and it's not that you didn't say it, it's not that people aren't saying it, but I do just want to point out that that Tolkien was a linguistic genius,
Hmm.
creating languages and things. And that's not that's not the easiest thing to do, guys. And I have to give him credit for this.
Mm.
Dwayne Olson says, true, this is positive fandom. Hopefully Amazon pulls it through. And we also have Mike Alito saying, not if they continue to produce content like Reacher and Boss and Wheel of Time. Oh, okay. I wasn't quite sure.
I don't
I think that
understand, Mikey. Are you anti those shows, or are you saying that
I think he
they're
liked
good?
Reacher, and Bosch and Wheel of Time. Oh, he's saying that they're good. If they
Yeah.
continue to produce these shows, they'll be fine. Because Reacher just has had such critical acclaim, and Mikey Lito also goes on to say that as long as it doesn't bankrupt Bezos, it will be a 2 week story. I also wanted to say hello to Viking Doug. Hi, Viking Doug. He says that game, and I'm assuming he's referring to Ghost of Tsushima. He
Mm.
says he has the game. It's freaking awesome, and I kind of think, Russ, that the reason why they're trying to grab so many people with these IPs is because so many people aren't maybe relying more on these video games to give them sort of an idea of historical events.
Maybe
Um,
I'm not a gamer. I have one game that I play, and so that's Rome Total War, which I absolutely love. And I've also got the Aliens one, Colonial Marines. But everyone said that was really crap, but I really quite liked it. But that's about my level of gaming knowledge. So I can't really comment. I don't know what Ghost of Tsushima is, even what it is. Sorry.
yeah, well, to be honest with you, Russ, the reason why I brought it up was only because it was such a revolutionary game.
Hmm.
And from the storyline, which is I think the invasion of the Mongols in Japan,
Hmm.
and you play as a samurai swordsman who has to defend essentially it's very deadly. There's a lot of death in it. It's historically, I don't know how historically accurate, but the depictions of what you're seeing are historically accurate, meaning
Hmm.
from the dress, from the clothing, from the environment. It's absolutely spectacular, Russ. And if you saw it, you'd be like, wow, this does look kind of cool. It's cool looking. And I think that why I'm bringing it up is because we have game creators who are creating, more fascination just in a game versus in some of IPs and stories. And so the ability to create these stories is there, but who is actually creating these stories more effectively? Is
Mm.
it, gamers? Is it, maybe other areas of creativity are thriving more? Is it anime more than regular comics? Just trying to get an idea of where these creativity stories that people are kind of relying on now
I can only
for
talk to
entertainment.
I can only talk to Rome Total War, and I know or the Total War series, and I know for a fact because I recently just watched a documentary about this that some YouTuber who was hugely into it had put up that they went through the mill getting that shit right in terms of units and what they were and where they were and all the rest of it. So if that's the yardstick to go by, then yes, I can imagine they do all sorts of research because to get these things right because there's we're kind of movie and TV nerds if you want. I can tell you from having written a couple of books, there are historical nerds out there as well that if you've got the wrong centurion doing the wrong thing with the wrong buttons on his tunic or whatever it happens to be, you're in trouble. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's a very good point too. Magus of Vicanti says, "I'm a realist. I tend toward positive, and I'm willing to give just about anything a shot. But where Hollywood is concerned, until things shake down, I am being super cautious, and that's okay too. And one of the things why I started the channel was to focus on the positive, but also kind of like where do you put the energy when you see something and you're disappointed, and it's kind of like, oh, I was kind of disappointed in that, and I think that this talking about some of the things that we are disappointed or hoping for or having greater expectations is kind of like a therapy. I think for the fandom, and I know it is for me. I do like
Mm.
to kind of talk it out and focus on it, but we also, I find that it's easier for me to let it go once I've talked about it because I don't want to necessarily hold on to things that are disappointing. So I'll just say, okay, I'm going to have to let that go and not even look at it again. But I understand everybody out there, when you see things that are disappointing and the effect that it can have on you. And, this is why we're here. We can talk about these concerns and, express them because you need to express your feelings too. And I think that this medium here on YouTube is a positive way to do it. So that's why I encourage all of you to, just talk it out here with us.
Yeah,
Right, Russ?
100%. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there is, you know what, Megas, you're absolutely right. There is a lot of trepidation, like we just had with Shogun. I had no idea they were remaking Shogun, and my first thought was, "Oh my god, how shit is this going to be?" And you know what? It could be brilliant. I find that we tend to look back at things with rose-tinted spectacles a little bit, but there was so much good stuff that came before. I mean, you and I were doing the Underworld thing, and those films are really fucking old now, but they're so good. I love them. I think they're brilliant.
We
But
can
let's.
be like, I love that.
Yes, he's so cool. Oh, Kate Beckinsale, come and give me a cuddle. Distracted now thinking of Kate Beckinsale. However, yes, trepidation about Lord of the Rings, trepidation now about Shogun and all that. But there's so much good stuff coming down the pipe as well and being created. And it's almost like, and I think we can do more of this, is focus on the good shit like Reacher, the good shit like Peacemaker, the rush of love that we had for that Justice League scene in Peacemaker, the hope, the desperate hope that our dreams could come true with, for me, the Snyder bots, that our dream could come true. And how exciting would that be? Like, all of this stuff would just power. Fuck Lord of the Rings. I don't care. I'm not going to watch it. I've got this. This is what I wanted. It'll be fine. There is a lot of good stuff coming out, and I find in this little corner of the internet, I was. It was the drinker was talking about this a long time ago, and he was on one of his streams, and he just mentioned it in passing, and he's mentioned it once or twice. Things with negative titles tend to get more clicks than things with positive titles, and we do tend to focus a little bit on what shit. And then we can kind of like, we have shit instead of rose tinted spectacles, we've got shit covered goggles, right? And everything now we're sort of fearing that it's going to be rubbish. And that's kind of far from the truth. There are lots of good things. I think you have to dig a little bit. I've spoken before about The Last Kingdom on Netflix. I think it's fantastic. There's all sorts of good stuff out there, but you do have to look for it. And you and I are need to big up stuff like that more than anything else. There are lots of low, mid-range budget action movies that have come out that I think I've said before on this channel. They have no agenda. They're just dumb action movies. They're great fun, and there's a ton of them out there. You just have to go on and look for Scott Adkins, look for Michael Jai White, look for John Claude Van Damme, look for Dolph Lundgren. There's tons of stuff, and I think we can focus more on that and less. But when something big comes along, you have to react to it, and we would be remiss not to address Lord of the Rings. But yeah, Stubble McShade is saying, I will wait with the criticism of the Rings and Powers till it airs and streams, and I think that's probably right. I think what happened to the fan base was this is literally the fan base has perceived it as an fu, and that has sent rabid Tolkien fans rabid. They're furious about this. But as our and others have pointed out, those rabid millions upon millions, which there are of Tolkien fans that are going to boycott this and hate it forever, make up that much of a percentage of the people that are actually going to watch this show, who could give zero shits about the integrity of the law. They just want to watch a good show. So I go back to, if it's good, it'll probably win. If it sucks balls, it'll fail. It'll fail on being shit, and that's my thought.
And thank you for sharing that thought. Stella McShave says, I wait with the criticism
I
of,
just covered that.
yes, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. Okay.
yeah.
I apologize. And Toffee20 says, does Russ have a channel?
No one wants to listen to me. I only get to let off steam on this channel like once a week, and then Arum puts me back in my box, and I go away till next week. No, mate, I don't have a channel at all. I've got a website which is russellwhitfield.com, but it's like 1,000 years out of date. But my email address is on there if you want to shout at me after the show. You more than welcome to.
Okay. And Stubble also says, is the series ruined with a few things that you don't like if the rest is good? I remember the narrative when the first Dune information was released. This is a good question. And for me, I would say no, it's not ruined. But I do, point out certain things that I don't like. For example, I've made it, maybe not in the series, but in the Eternals, there was one certain thing that I didn't like. I felt that the main character wouldn't be fighting with somebody that he is married to in that way. Like, he wouldn't come to blows with, this woman that he's loved for 7,000 years. And I felt that it also was a very bad representation of like a male character in general. Men don't do stuff like this. You're not going to be like,
I haven't seen it. how bad is that? And it's got Angelina Jolie in it, and I haven't seen it, and I love Angelina Jolie. I wish she was my girlfriend, but yeah, like I stand a chance. Actually, I wish Pamela Anderson was my. I am going to be Pamela's sixth and final husband. I said it now on air. I love you, Pamela. If you're watching, I'm available. Yeah, I haven't seen the Eternals yet, and I really must get round to doing it. But I'm in the throes of watching Reacher, so I must get round to it.
Well, I do want to say something about Reacher before we talk about this Megas of Vacanti comment.
Mhm,
And the thing that I was going to say about Reacher is that the books by Lee Child were extraordinary. You know, Lee Child is a British writer,
mhm,
and you know, he wrote these series of books based on this character. And it's about 20 or so books, Russ, that
mm.
are really just fun to read. And something that I found quite interesting about the approach to writing was that um, the character played by Alan Richson seems to convey the Lee Child character in the book to a T. And aside from how he looks, there's a certain level of solitude of the character as he expresses that he, you know, whenever he's in a situation where he gets arrested by the police, that he decides to remain silent, and he explains why. And I thought to myself that this man, you know, while it's true he's incredibly attractive, he's a very intelligent man, and this intelligence is what he's used to solve cases, to be an excellent soldier, you know, to save lives in the battlefield, and essentially to solve crimes wherever he goes. And I did just want to say that the intelligence that comes across is very clear in the Alan Richardson character. And, you know, I do mention that he's very attractive and everything, but that intelligence is even more attractive. And I think that for a lot of viewers, yes, it is true he gets violent and he's very active, but he's really the total package. And I think that you know, writing a dynamic character like that, you know, Lee Child is kind of, you know, really given us something very special. And this Reacher portrayal, you know, hits all the marks for me.
It's
So
odd. It's something. There's something, and I don't want to misspeak and say something potentially offensive here. It's not my intent. So when I use the words, it's not meant with any. I'm not disparaging anybody, but it's almost like he is on a different spectrum to the rest of the people in the show. The way he sort of reacts to things, and he has this look in his eyes, and he's so far ahead of people in what he's doing. He's almost sort of sometimes rude and dismissive. Like, you know, someone says, are you just going to leave that there?" And he just goes, "Yes." And it completely blanks them, and he's just walking past them. It's like he's intellectually so on a different plane to everybody else, and his social interactions are quite odd and dismissive at times when he's with the inspector, and I can't remember the character's name.
Finley, Inspector Finley.
Finley. Yeah,
Yeah.
Inspector Finley. He's really dismissive of him, and it's almost rude, but it's not rude. He's just on this different plane, and I found that was chef's kiss. Whether that's the actor or whether that's in the books, I don't know, or the director, but the way that he portrays that, I'm not quite here. I'm not all down with you people. I'm kind of somewhere else, and I see things in a different way. And that sometimes then means that my social interactions are really off key. Yeah, he does these things that are just like socially rude and off kilter. I thought that was fantastic. Yeah, I'm going to watch it tonight actually when we're finished here.
Well, another detective who does that is Wallander. I don't know if you ever watched the
Was that
Kenneth
Kenneth
Branagh
Brown?
version.
Yeah.
And he tends to have those awkward social situations, but it's because he suddenly just, you know, figured out I've got to go and see this person right away before someone else gets killed. It's
Mm,
more important that I kind of leave this party. You know, this party doesn't really mean anything. What's
yeah.
more important is that someone else doesn't get killed, and I can see the importance of that. And we have about 5 minutes left, Russ.
Oh,
Um, yeah, these 2 hours go by so quickly. I'm Magus
it's
of the
because you're
Conti says
so enchanting, or you know, the time when you're with a beautiful woman, the time just absolutely you fly. I know you've got to look at a fucking troll, but you know, for me, it's yeah, the time went nowhere. I can't imagine. There we are.
Oh, thank you, Russ. That's just some kind words, and I appreciate them. Megas of Bacanti says, I'm much more positive about anime and manga just because of the track record it has. And it's well within my wheelhouse, so I tend to be biased. And we also have a comment by Mario Lopez who says, "Not everything is bad. Cobra Kai is amazing." I agree that
Couldn't agree more. It's
definitely
sick as
something.
fuck. Yeah.
Yeah, and here Megas Vacanti goes on and says, "Look, if the new Shogun fails, the old one is still there, and the new one will quickly call through the cracks in comparison. It will be a waste, sure, but the damage it does by the originals will be limited over the longer term."
True say.
And we have a Bloodsport who says, "Hey, RM in chat room. Hey, Bloodsport one." I
Awesome film. Awesome film, by the way.
And obviously he makes a point. I do love Reacher. I love Reacher. I love it.
Hmm.
Um, and Stubble says there's a powerful, silent, physical presence in Reacher, the books in the series, that Tom Cruise wasn't able to portray in the movies. And I agree with that. What do you think, Russ?
Yeah, I think that's almost kind of like the Lord of the Rings thing we were talking about with Tom Cruise. There, why make a Reacher movie when you're 5'8"? Yeah, you're not Jack Reacher. Just get Dolph Lundgren to do it, or something. Back in those days, do that. Don't be Tom Cruise. But yeah, if you, as a non-Reacher fan, I can, because I've never read the books, right? My ex-wife Sally's a huge fan, and she's all over this show, for obvious pictorial reasons. But it was just a generic action film. They were great, but I can imagine if I was a hardcore Reacher fan, I'd be pissed off that little Tom Cruise is portraying my favorite literary character. But yeah, I agree, Stubble.
And Mike Alito says Cruz was just a machine. He wasn't a physical presence. That's also a very good.
He was badass. He was badass, but he wasn't Jack Reacher, was he? Because he doesn't look the part, and that's so incredibly important. No matter who you envisioned when you were reading those books, I can guarantee you it wasn't Tom Cruise that you had in your mind's eye, and you're going to be a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, and I agree. Tom Jr. Jackson says the topics are so engaging, and our beauty keeps us on point. Well, thank you, Tom Jr. Jackson. You're going to make me blush. You guys are so kind.
You
Um,
smoothie.
and Bloodsport One says that Dave Batista should play Reacher. I wouldn't have been so.
Could have done.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been surprised by that at all.
Maybe too
Um,
old. Maybe he's too old.
maybe
He's getting onto his 50s now, isn't he? And Richard isn't. Richard's like in his 30s, I think. So um, maybe, but yeah. Absolutely, he could have done.
Well, I just wanted to say, Russ, that this Sunday brunch has been wonderful as always, having you here. Where can people find you, Russ, if they need to get in contact with you?
Hiding mostly. I've got a website, as I said, it's russellwhitfield.com. It's very, very out of date, but there is a contact form on there if you want to get in contact with me, or I guess they can ping you or and you would let me know, I guess. But no, I don't really have a social media presence as such, or a channel or anything like that. But we have 3 minutes left, so I'd like to find out where we can find you.
Yes, you can find me obviously here on my channel, Positive Fandom, on YouTube. And you can also find me on Twitch streaming, which I'm actually streaming now at the same time. It's Positive Fandom, one word. On Monday nights, you can find me streaming with Lorraine Creole
Mhm.
on Toxic Femininity at 8 p.m. Eastern. On Wednesdays and Thursdays, you can find me on the 1/6 Scale Man Network, either on Say One, but always on Uncivilized Scoundrels streaming with Lael Rockwell. On Thursdays, also, I'm doing a special show with Lorraine Creole at 5 p.m. Eastern about the Jack Reacher series. So if you want to learn more about Jack Reacher, you can find me there with Lorraine Creole as well.
I can't wait
On
for that one.
Yeah, it's a good one. On Fridays at 12 p.m. Eastern, you can find me on Midnight's Edge in the morning with Tom and Andre and Cameron Pasha. On Friday nights, you can find me on Midnight Musings on the Burn Network, the Imagination Connoisseurs, and the Post Geek Singularity, which many of you are already members of. And of course, there are more PGS shows and PGS reviews coming out as well. And of course, on Sunday, come back and join us on our Sunday brunch show, 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Thank you, everybody, for watching the show. We so appreciate you all. Thank you, Russ, as always, making the show so special
Absolute pleasure.
here. And thanks to everybody out there. I wish you all very well. And of course, thanks to Tom Jr. Jackson, our collaborator, and our mod, who is always doing a great job. We so appreciate you
You're a
too.
legend,
And
mate.
yes, you are. And for all of you out there, yes, Dwayne Olson, the show is that the feminine gaze examines Reacher. That's exactly what Lorena and I will be doing. And Mikey Lito says, see you later. Tom Jr. Jackson says, I've got it. I have to end it before it goes to 2 minutes. Sorry, 2 hours. So we have like less than 60 seconds. But for everybody, on behalf of the Sunday Brunch, me, RM, and Russ, and Tom, thank you for coming. And remember to always please be kind.
See you later, guys. Thank you.